In our lesson today, more on the gas law. So a good place to begin is, what is that gas law formula anyway? Who can tell me what that formula looks like? What do we have on that one, Abby? Perfect. P1V1 over T1 equals P2V2 over T2. Gets a little hard to say that. It almost becomes a tongue twister. We saw on the problems that we've done so far, we can put in the 5 of those that they give us, and wherever the missing one is, then solve for it. We also saw that sometimes maybe it makes more sense to get a formula for the one we're trying to find, to isolate one of them first, and then to plug everything in. Today, we're going to be doing them the second way for 2 reasons. One, because the directions are going to say begin by solving for, which means first get a formula, in this case T2 equals. The other reason, look how messy these numbers are that we're going to plug in. And we don't want to have to write them down by hand any more times than we have to. We don't want to have to write them down once, and then we start moving them around to isolate the one variable we're looking for. We just want to write them in once and then punch them in the calculator. So for this one, we need to get T2 by itself. Because T2 is in a denominator, first step is I am going to switch it along a diagonal with that other numerator. All right, so first thing we're going to do is switch along that diagonal. So now I have T2 in this numerator, and I'll worry about the T1 in a minute. And then that equals P2V2, and now I'm putting P1V1 in the denominator. Now to get rid of the T1, I'm going to multiply both sides by T1. So it goes away over here. And here is my formula for what I need to do to find T2. Give me thumbs up, thumbs down. Everybody okay with this? Then we need to start plugging in all of these messy numbers and trying to be very careful that we get them all in the right places. So I need you guys to check as I go along that I get the right number in the right place and that I don't drop any zeros or any of that kind of stuff. So I'm going to say T2, this is what I'm going to enter in my calculator, P2. Okay, final pressure was this. So 0.0004 times 10 to the 15th. V2, that's my final volume. 0.015 times 10 to the minus 14. And T1. So let's see. That's pressure. That's volume. This, I think, is T1. So then I write in the 700 times 10 to the 4th. And then in my denominator, I need P1V1. So that's 40 times 10 to the 4th. And V1 is 0.0003 times 10 to the minus 6. Does that look right to you guys? Okay, calculators. Control divided by. You definitely want box over box before you start typing all of this in. Probably easier to look at where you've written it on your papers as you've taken notes as we've gone along, so you aren't constantly looking back up at the board. What did you get? Anybody else? Is that what you see on your calculator? Did anybody have it in scientific notation? What do you have in scientific notation? Not 3.5 to the 6th, but times 10 to the 6th. Big difference in those two. And this was temperature, so this is going to be kelvins. And either form of the answer is just fine. Anybody with a question on that one? Yes. Okay, so here, up here is the formula the way we memorize it. We are trying to find for this problem T2. Because T2 is in a denominator, if I want a formula that says T2 equals, I've got to get it out of the denominator. The easiest way to do that is switch along a diagonal. You can switch one whole numerator with one whole denominator as long as they're on opposite sides of the equal sign. So that was just switching and putting the P1, V1 down here in the denominator and the T2 up here on the other side. Then all we had to get rid of was the T1 in the denominator. Any other questions? Are we ready to go on? Okay, then one second one. So we're going to start off with our formula, which is P1 V1 over T1 equals P2 V2 over T2. This time we want P2. It is not in a denominator, so we're not going to do what we just said with switching along a diagonal. We want P2 to stay in a numerator. For this one, we simply have to get rid of the V2 and T2 that are there with the P2. Who can tell me how we get rid of those? Nicole, how do we get rid of those? And exactly right. Another way to say it would be we are going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal, because over here on the right, if I multiply by T2 over V2, those cancel and I have the one P2 that I want. So that means that my formula is, and it doesn't really matter what order you put this in, but I'm going to move my P2 over to the left. I had just P2 on the right, but I like to start with variable equals, just one of my quirks. And then that means on the other side, I now have P1, V1, T2. The order does not matter. And T1, V2. Did I get that right? Okay, now we're going to look at our problem and we're going to substitute in the information that we are given. So this ideal gas starts off with pounds per square inch. Is that a pressure, volume? What is that, Griff? That's my first pressure. So I'm going to put 0.003 times 10 to the 14th in for that P1. See, cubic centimeters, that's volume. So I'm going to put 0.007 there. T2, let's see, final volume, final temperature. So T2 is 0.003 times 10 to the 7th. T1, that's going to be the 7,000 K. And V2, final volume, 3 times 10 squared. Does that look right to you guys? Okay, then again, control divided by, so you have box over box. Your job is to enter that and let me know what we come up with. Number's fine. Yeah, what'd you get? You got what? 3 million? Did others get 3 million? What did you get? 30 million? Did others get 30 million? Did yours do it in scientific notation or just a bunch of zeros? So we may just have miscounted them, which is easy to do on that calculator display. It is 30 million. There should be 7 zeros showing if yours is doing the standard display, or you might have had 3 times 10 to the 7th. And let's see, I need units for pressure. Okay, that was the pounds per square inch one. Anybody with questions on this? So just to summarize, same formula that we've been using. No matter what the numbers are, if they say begin by solving for or begin by finding a formula for one, you get the formula where one letter equals some combination of all of the others. If the letter you're looking for, the variable you want, is in a denominator, easiest way to start is to switch along one diagonal, a numerator and a denominator. Whether they say solve for P2 or whatever first or not, if they give you scientific notation on the numbers, it's probably going to be easier to do the formula first. Okay, let's start working on homework.